Well, maybe some of the examples that I brought up have you a little bit concerned from the perspective of justice, of morality, of political philosophy, of this relativistic notion. But this was something that Plato especially found to have really bad consequences. And part of it was based on the experience of his teacher, Socrates. In one day, if you have some time, you might want to look at Plato's Apology, which is about the trial of Socrates. Now, Socrates thought there was an objective truth. Remember, we saw the clip at the beginning of the semester from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, where, Socrates was the guy who went around thinking that he knew nothing, but discovered that he did know some more than everybody else because he knew that he didn't know anything. Remember Bill and Ted said, "Yeah, man, dude, that's us." But he knew that he didn't know anything. He was looking for the objective truth, and he couldn't find it, and he was engaging in conversations all the time. Well, what happened is, as he'd engage in these conversations with the rich and famous, he got himself in a little bit of trouble, and you can imagine what would happen. Imagine you go over to Mayor Bloomberg and you start asking him stuff about justice and what ought to be done, and then he gives you an answer, and basically you show that he's contradicted himself. You make a fool out of him. Well, you've certainly made an enemy there. And imagine you do that to Bill Gates, the head of the guy who started Microsoft, very wealthy man, or Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the country. These guys wouldn't be very happy with you. And back in the old days, that's exactly what happened with Socrates. In fact, nowadays the jet setters, the children of the super wealthy, the rich and the famous, the movie stars are running around in jets, driving around Ferraris, going to parties all night at very fancy clubs in Manhattan that some of you guys might run into on occasion, like some of the hip-hop stars. But back in the old days, they didn't have the clubs, they didn't have the Ferraris. So at least some of the guys who were very wealthy, the children of the very wealthy, used to hang around with Socrates. And in fact, it got a little bit embarrassing because Socrates would not only embarrass the rich and famous and powerful, but furthermore, he'd do it in front of his crew of, younger people. So what happened was they trumped up some charges and brought Socrates to trial. It ends up, after a bit of a story, Socrates gets convicted on these trumped up charges, and the charges were that he corrupted the youth and he denied the gods. Now, corrupting the youth was pretty bad, but denying the gods back in those days was a really bad kind of thing, because denying the gods is what you got convicted of when you murdered somebody. So with it came the death penalty. So Socrates ends up getting convicted and sentenced to death. Now, Socrates believed that there were these absolute values, absolute way of doing things, and he played along with the trial. Nonetheless, he's now sentenced to death. And how do you guys think that they used to execute people back in ancient Greece, or ancient Athens, I should say? Well, some of you maybe stoned him. No. Hanging? No. Chopped his head off? No. You used to have to drink the poison yourself. That is basically you committed suicide. So that was what Socrates was waiting for. And what happens then? One of his students, Crito, comes to him and says, one of the rich and famous, says, "Socrates, I can't believe we let this happen to you. Don't worry about it. Your execution is coming in a couple of days, but we've arranged to buy your way out of prison. We found a place for you to go, a place called Thessaly. Nice place. Imagine you guys are in the position. You've been arrested on trumped up charges because, you made Bloomberg mad for some reason. I shouldn't say that, because I don't think he would treat you in an unjust fashion like this, but you made somebody mad. They falsified evidence, planted drugs on you, planted a murder weapon, and now you're sentenced to death. And a friend of yours comes to you and says, "Hey, look, we can play off the guards, get you out of prison, and we can send you to, if we found a place for you to live outside the United States, maybe if you like beaches, it's the place with the perfect beach in the Bahamas, perfect weather. If you like the colder weather, maybe it has a nice Arctic climate. Whatever, it's the perfect vacation spot for you. You never have to work. You'll be playing for the rest of your life." Well, what is it that you will do? And usually the reaction when I say this in class is most students say, "Well, gee, I'd take off." Not Socrates. Socrates he says to Crito, "Hey, we first have to examine the matter and see what the right thing to do. There are objective values. We have to do what's justice, because just because I've been wronged and injustice was done to me doesn't make it right for me to harm somebody else." And with that whole background, we find out that Socrates then gives an argument about why he can't escape, to which we'll turn in a second.